Having me. So I know that previously you guys had a very big session on tokenomics and you guys loved it. So I want to continue the conversation a little bit more. And given that this is the second session, I believe you probably came here with a lot of questions. So I want to begin with setting an agenda. If you have any key topics you want to talk about, let me know. This is my plan and I really want this to be very informal, just very live, because this is not a lecture. We didn't finish school to go back to school again. So I'm going to split this into two parts. The first one is explaining what token economics is, what kind of framework and systems I have designed and basically built the first company that I have. And the second one is looking at how can we use tokens to do data analytics, which I believe is the growing field in the next 5 years. So with that, feel free, I would like at least 5 different topics from you guys. And later we'll have Q&A, and the best person that asks, or the person that asks the best question will receive a book that I've written, and the book is The Economics and Math of Token Engineering and DeFi. I wrote this book 5 years ago, and it's still the book of how to design economics in the Web3 space. Sounds good?
Perfect.
Perfect. All right, so given that you guys have done the first session before, I believe you came here with some questions. Otherwise, you won't be here, because it's summertime, the sun is beautiful, but you're spending time here. So there must be some opportunity cost for you to come here. What is the takeaway you want to get out of this session so it's worth your time? Yes?
You mentioned token analytics. So what data are you pulling and how do you pull the data?
Good question. Okay, we'll add that later. Great. What else? Yes?
So I feel that currently tokenomics of many projects is really broken because there are lots of token unlocks which are coming.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the actual structure of of these funds and so on, Anderson Horowitz and other guys, they exit very early.
Mm-hmm.
And those who are left waiting for these unlocks, I mean, all the big guys, they just do not wait for that.
Mm.
So there should be a solution to this problem, otherwise people will just pass it.
So that's a very big question. I'm going to figure out, I'm going to call it token unlocks and utility.
Yes, and also the problem of big players exiting too early, actually.
Okay, stakeholders for tokens. Sorry, my handwriting is like almost like a doctor. It's terrible. All right, what else? Yes?
I have a question for it's great to have something like a list of tips or something, like tips of a scam token.
Scam tokens, very good. In my book, I have one chapter called Ponzinomics, how to create scams, and from there you know how to deal with scams, or how to identify scams. All right, one more, yes?
Do you use some type of forecasting, maybe, and which models are you using for forecasting the prices in the future?
Okay, great question. So, yes?
Actually, we had a recent discussion about this. Like big companies having audits for their finances. Our Web3 companies also have audits on their tokens, on their tokenomics. They all have their plans, they all have their tokenomics, but are they abiding by this day by day, year by year?
Okay, so what does token audit look like?
How can we make it more secure and transparent for everyone involved?
Perfect. All right. Any other questions? No? All right. Let's get started. So I'll give you a very quick high-level introduction of who I am and what I do and why I'm standing here speaking to you. So I came into this space 7 years ago, and my background is in economics. I saw Web3 as a very fantastic tool. But before that, I didn't believe in blockchain at all. I thought it was the world's biggest scam. And that's fine. New technologies, you have scam, that's completely fine. But they were using economics to scam people. They were just taking some random economic equation in theory and tell people, my white paper is super solid. You've got this economics math in place, and so you should give me all your money, mortgage your house, and then I'm going to make you rich. Doesn't work this way. And I got personally offended, and I started my whole crypto journey just arguing with people online. arguing so much that I couldn't write anymore, and I started making videos and explaining to people why this doesn't work, how to create a framework on how do you build something that works. I get your intention, but this is not, you can't just take a random math model and tell people this is how things work. This is not, life is not like that. If we can just put a math model and explain how things work, we won't have situations like Venezuela, Argentina, Zimbabwe. We can just math our way out. We can just forecast and model our way out and find solution, but life is not like that. So I came into this space figuring out, okay, this is a fantastic technology, but what is missing? What do we need in Web3 that's different from Web2 from a human sense? And how can economics solve that? The most important thing that's different in Web2 and Web3 from an economics perspective is coordination and collaboration. At the end of the day, as societies, what we're trying to do is to get people to coordinate and collaborate together. You see that in projects, your different kind of sprints in your software. You see that in companies, people of different departments coming together to work together to build a company. You see that in countries, different people working on different kind of stuff, coming together to build value in the company, value in the country, increase GDP. So it's all about coordination and collaboration. And tokens, I believe, is the solution to that. And we'll talk about it later. So basically, that's how I began my journey. I wanted to do a PhD, but back then, of all the different deans or different professors in the universities told me, crypto's a scam, you can't talk about doing a PhD because nobody cares about crypto, you need to do traditional economics or traditional finance, otherwise no one will take you seriously. So I said, thank you for that, good feedback, I don't care about you, I'm going to start my own company instead. So I started the first company, Economics Design, and the company helps projects to go from 0 to 1. So projects come to us with a protocol, with an idea, with a business, and say that I need a token, either to bootstrap my community, to fundraise, or potentially even to do economic security in terms of running validator nodes and validating different kind of data. So with that, we help projects to build their designer model until they go to TGE. Halfway through this system, I realized, okay, this is really great to help projects to come into the space with all these new projects coming up, especially like what this gentleman said earlier, lots of projects, lots of interesting ideas and tokens, but halfway through you realize this entire thing is just a bit weird. Sure, they have designed with good intentions and good objectives in mind, but as projects starts to grow, the founders leave, the tokens get diluted, tokens keep getting unlocked, and the whole intention or the whole principle of why the project existed in the first place just went away. And that's where I believe analytics comes back in to figure out how do we use data, which is verified data we have on blockchain, how do we use that to help improve business operations. So today I want to divide this into two sessions. The first session talks about why we need a token, how tokens come in, how we design a token, answering some of these questions. And the second part, we'll talk about analytics. So once tokens are live, what the hell do we do with it? It's not just about investment, it's not just about asset allocation, it's not just about voting on the DAO votes, but how can we use these data that we have, these on-chain data or maybe off-chain data, to make actual business decisions to create value in the long run. So that's what I'm going to talk about today and answer all your questions in the meantime. And this session is going to be a two-way conversation. Okay, if you have questions, just shout out, or you can raise your hands, whatever you feel comfortable with, and then we can have a dialogue. Sounds good? Perfect. All right, so I'll start with the framework that I've built and created, which is the main thesis of how any of these things work. And it came from traditional economics. And what we're going to look at is these three different boxes here. We're going to look at macro to micro, and this is how we're going to design economics in the first place. We have tokens in place, and what does tokens even mean, and why do we need to design tokens? What are the different aspects we need to consider? The first thing we're going to look at is market. So market is really the macro environment. Yes, you've got tokens, yes, you have users, yes, you have your business, but you need to figure out what is this market we're talking about? Who gets to come into this ecosystem? Who maybe you need to validate and you need to whitelist, or maybe it's completely free for all. People just need to provide liquidity into your protocol and other people can trade. Understanding who is in your market, what is this environment, what's this market structure, who are the users that get to come in, is the first thing we design in this economy. So we start with high-level market. Then we look at the next one, mechanism. Mechanism is the rules of how users interact in this ecosystem. So market will be how many new users come in, user acquisition, user retention. And mechanism, these are incentives of how people interact and behave with each other. At the end of the day, the reality in life is that nobody does everything just pure out of goodness of their heart. They're always incentivized to do they do something because they're incentivized to do so. The butcher doesn't sell you meat because he's worried you get hungry. The butcher sells you meat so he can get money and then he can feed his family. So understanding how incentives comes in is what we look at in mechanism. Now in the market, we've got all these users coming together, we gather users together, and now we need to figure out what are these incentives we have in place for users to interact with each other. Make sense so far? Anyone unclear so far? No? Okay. And last one. Token. So everything we've talked about so far has not touched tokens at all. And lastly, tokens come in. Tokens come in because when we talk about market, users come in. Your product is a business. It should be good enough that people want to come in and use your product in the first place. If you need to incentivize people, you need to bribe people to use your product and then they leave after the bribe is gone. That's not a business. That's a very expensive hobby. So firstly, the market is to understand you need a good product to attract people in. Then we need some rules of how people engage with each other in this economy. And lastly, we have tokens. And tokens can represent anything. It could be fungible, non-fungible, tradable, non-tradable. Token is everything that represents whatever asset is in your ecosystem that you're creating. So for example, reputation as a way to signal intent of trading as part of your incentive mechanism. That can be a token. It's a non-tradable reputation-based token, maybe like a soul-bound token of sorts. It could be a fungible token like a currency to trade to allow interaction in your market. It could be a security-like token that accrues value, whether it's monetary value or non-monetary value, as your ecosystem grows. So the long story short is, for every ecosystem and economy that you create, you have to look at market, mechanism, and token design. Look at who is in the market, what rules they have to abide by in the market, and what kind of assets are there in the space. Because once we define who is in the market, what are the rules they get to abide by, then we can start looking at how do we use tokens to incentivize more of such activities or disincentivize certain activities and behaviors. Everyone with me so far? Okay, perfect. So this is the core basic framework of how everything is done, how everything is run. And if we go back to a couple of these things, this is where we can start diving deep into these topics. So let's deal with shareholders for tokens first. So when we look at shareholders for tokens, it's important to understand, okay, I'll ask you, where does shareholders come in? Shareholders come in market, mechanism, or token? Just the idea of shareholders. Which category do they fall under?
In market.
Market, correct. So shareholders are basically a kind of economic agent, right? So in the market, it's who are in the space. So you have shareholders, you have investors, you have users, you have whatever kind of other place in the space. So now that we know that shareholders are part of this market, then we need to understand if shareholders are here, it's important to understand how do they interact? What are the incentives? What are the rules they have to abide by to interact in this economy? And from there, we have tokens to incentivize certain kind of action. Let's make this as action. So shareholders they have to do a certain kind of action. It could be to create and increase value in the long run of these projects by really investing, making the right decisions. Or maybe they are just here to extract value in the short run. Once tokens pump up, they're just extracting the value, sell the tokens, and they leave. So because of that, it's very important to understand what kind of action they will do, the natural action, and what is the action we want them to do. We want them to hold the tokens longer, to not sell the tokens, and how can we use tokens to incentivize that? So I guess one of your questions, you asked the question of shareholders and tokens, right? And your question is basically, tokens are getting unlocked and shareholders are just selling the tokens. How do we deal with these ecosystems moving forward?
And actually, for example, huge investment funds, they can give their portion of future tokens to a small fund, sell the other part and just quit. That's where it happens too often.
Yeah. So the question is basically, a lot of these investors, they hold the tokens. Once it's time to sell, they put some smaller share of the tokens into another fund, and then they sell everything.
Yes.
So basically a big dump into the market.
They basically, so they give like 50% to somebody else, sell 50% and they do what to do with the token.
Yes. So That's something that really frustrates me as well. If I could expand that a little bit, I'm also looking at this category of airdrops. Airdrops, you're giving out tokens, and there is not a very long lockup period, and people are not really incentivized to hold these tokens, and they're selling it. There are a lot of ways we can dive deeper into figuring out how to incentivize stakeholders to hold longer. It could be different kind of benefits. It could be given like different kind of threshold and milestones where they can get token unlocked after a certain milestone is reached, so that they're not just dumping. It's not just a time value or not a time limitation before they sell, but there's some milestones that you can hit within the project. So it's over here. Life doesn't need to be so direct as, okay, you get tokens, after X amount of months, you sell. But you can get tokens and you have other terms and conditions applied to it before you can release and sell the tokens. And this is where it's important to, this is also where the quality of the projects matters a lot. Because if the quality of the project is very high and investors believe in it, they believe that in the long run, holding it in the long run in T+1 gives me much better value than just selling it at T0 now. I'm more likely to hold it for tomorrow, sell it tomorrow, than sell it today, because I believe that the project will grow and gives me more value tomorrow.
So the problem is that somebody can sell this right to acquire tokens in the future to somebody else off market under the table, and nobody gets to know about it. So,
Yeah, and the problem with that is?
I don't know how to solve it.
That's a very good question, and I don't know if that's a problem that we need to solve, because in the traditional market, the traditional financial market like that, these are all derivatives, right? When we hold an asset, there's a risk attached to it. If I can sell some of that risk off and I pay someone to hold that risk, I can do that because maybe I'm holding a huge chunk of DYDX token, or I'm holding a huge chunk of whatever kind of tokens. And so this is a whole new market that you can create out of just a token-based market. Everything we're talking about here is the current spot rate market of how tokens are being created. We can start creating secondary and tertiary market of getting more complex financial models and financial products. I don't think that's a bad thing per se. Are we sophisticated enough to do that? Are we measuring risk enough to start creating more complex structure? I don't think we're there yet. But the ability to create such structure, I think, is going to be a good thing for crypto with time to come. Okay, so the next thing is scam tokens. I really like talking about scam tokens because I have an entire chapter in my book in scam tokens, because this is like the most common thing. The thing is, as we design this market, we start to design top down, right? So why should people come, really understanding what is the value proposition? Why should people come to your protocol? There's so many protocols out there. People can just fork the code and create the protocol. Why should people come to your protocol? There's a lot of value that needs to be added, and it can't just be because the influencer is pretty or the pudgy penguin is very cute. There needs to be a value acquisition, a value proposition of why people come into your ecosystem, and then understanding what the mechanisms, what are these rules that is embedded within the system to allow people to interact more with each other. And then from there, understanding how the tokens help to achieve these goals and how does that impact the market is going to be very important. Of course, when it comes to scam tokens, there's a lot of deeper dive to go into. There are a lot of different kind of red flags out there. I think a very high level, simple one is that, of course, a huge allocation goes to the founders. And we don't see that as much anymore. Last couple of years, there were a lot. And sometimes it's not directly to the founders, but it could be a part allocated to community, and community has different kind of tranches. The first tranche, which is the biggest lot given to community, is only given to insiders, and somehow these insiders are all the founders or friends of founders or shareholders or investors and investors' friends. There are a lot of projects like that, and you have to white label your wallet, so these people create like 100 different MetaMask wallets to just Sybil attack the entire system. So just understanding who has access to the information. If information is very transparent, it's clear and easy to find, it's easy to see, they're not hiding between the lines, that's one of a good sign that this is a bit more of a serious project. And the second thing is going back to, I know that we talk about tokens, but one important thing is who are the people behind it. If it's projects that are like influencer tokens and projects that has been scammed before, then probably don't believe in them. If it's too good to be true, it's probably a scam. All right, and I want to talk about forecasting and models before I move into token audits, because the token audit part is a very good question. So forecasting and models. Who here work with tokens and do like modeling for tokens? 1, 2, 3. Okay, and who here like invest in tokens and you need forecasting to figure out how you should do your asset allocation? 2, 3, okay. What else do you guys do with tokens? Like, do you just hold it and just like print it? Yes?
No, we stake, for example, there is a stake in the coin in each project.
Okay, good point. Staking and restaking. What else do you guys do with tokens?
Voting.
Voting, okay, I like that.
Burning.
Burning? Thank you for the rest of the world says thank you. Okay, so tokens have a lot of different use cases, and forecasting and models is actually a very big category after this is being done. So what we're doing over here is the qualitative rules of how, or qualitative aspect of how the economy works. So the analogy that I always put is like a country. We're building a brand new country. We're building a brand new Serbia, and we need to write the laws of how Serbia 2.0 is going to be, how taxes are going to be done, how much income tax people have to pay, how much government is being paid. We have to write all these rules of how people in Serbia need to abide by it. And this is exactly what things are. We're writing the rules of how this economy will run. Who gets to come into the economy, employment, immigration, all that kind of stuff. What are the rules of how people should interact in this system? How much taxes you have to pay? Do you get free healthcare? Do you get free education? All these rules of how you interact in this ecosystem. And token will be what kind of currency are we going to use? Maybe we're going to integrate with EU and we start using euros, or maybe we integrate with another country or we start our own new currency.
Again, this is feeding into centralizing the whole ecosystem. So why?
Why are we centralizing this whole ecosystem?
Decentralized finance.
Good question. So what we're doing over here is really coordinating, coming together to agree on the rules that we all follow.
Yeah, but then we shouldn't ask government bodies, it should be the community.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Good question. So I was using an example, saying that if we need to let's say all of us here are, in the future, Serbia is only all of us for some reason. And we all come together to write how we want Serbia 2.0 to look like. And because we're participants of this new ecosystem and it's only us, we come together to make that decision. And we can update these decisions through decentralized voting, through new people coming in, and we can update the system as we go. Does that answer your question? We're not centralizing, this is not fixed and that's it. This is stage one. With every country growth, every company growth, every protocol's growth, there's going to be a change in the market structure, which requires a change in the mechanisms. And maybe we need to either redesign the token or we need to create new kind of token models in the space. So everything we've done so far right now is discussing what were the qualitative rules or qualitative incentives of how this economy will look like. That is not enough. That will not help you to raise funds, especially that will not help you to design or write any smart contract. What we need is to go into the forecasting and models part to really take all these qualitative rules out and find a quantitative number to it and really model this entire thing out. Anyone confused so far? I feel like people are confused. No?
Can you repeat what you just said so we can
Yes,
take it
yes. Okay, so the 2 steps. How we design the economy is in 2 folds. Step 1, we define the qualitative side of things. So everyone needs to go to school, full stop. Then we need to put a number to that. Everyone needs to go to school, but everyone only needs to go to school 3 times a day, not 5 times a day. So we need to put a number to these things. We say that everyone needs to interact with each other, but what does that mean? Everyone needs to pay each other, what does that mean? And we need to put a number to that. So this is where forecasting and models come in. Forecasting and models are 2 separate things. A model is just understanding, given all of these, how do we model, how do we look at putting the numbers to these systems? I'll go into details a bit later. Basically, all this qualitative stuff requires a number in there, and we'll put them on an Excel model just to understand what the economy looks like. Forecasting is then predicting what the price of assets or change would be in the long run. So when we start with model, how we usually do this with everything in economics is supply and demand. What we have in the market structure here is supply. Who are the people coming in? Why do they come in? How do they interact in the system? What we have in mechanism and token over here is the demand. How do we get people to want to interact in our system? Just because there's user acquisition, just because you hold the specific just because you hold the Lisa token doesn't mean you spend money or you spend the Lisa token or you stake and restake or you burn the Lisa token or you vote using the Lisa token. There's just a supply of the Lisa tokens, full stop. So we need to understand what is the demand, given that we have users in the space, given that we have all these economic agents, given that we understand how we want them to behave, given that we have incentives there to get them to behave. What does that look like? What does that demand and supply look like? That's what we do in models. Forecasting then is to really stretch that out and start playing with a bit more probability. So maybe out of 100% of all the daily active users or new users coming in, only 20% will stay in the next 2 weeks because the drop-off is huge. And so with all of these kind of numbers and probability in place, can we forecast what will the economy look like in the next 60 months, next 5 years, or next 10 years? So on a very high level, this is the difference between forecasting and models. When it comes to the tools used, there are two main models that people, or two main kind of mechanisms people do. The first one is Excel models. Anyone here done anything in finance? All right. In finance, they use a lot of Excel models and they do a lot of prediction, and you can write very complicated, beautiful models in Excel. That's the standard thing. Excel has been there since dinosaurs were here, and Excel will still be here once humans are gone. Very powerful tool, and it will continuously be an extremely powerful tool. So we have Excel over there. The second kind is agent-based modeling. This is something a little bit more new, and this is where you typically people run Python, and one of these tools out there is called CAD. So CAD. So CAD is designed by the block science team in the token engineering community, and it's based on it's a language, something like a language or package built on Python. What they do is they start modeling user behavior. So what does that mean? How do I explain that? So let's say we've got this guy John. So we have John in the market, and John is a liquidity provider. And he has maybe 10,000 tokens. And John wants to earn some rewards by providing liquidity. So what their model does is he gets John, gets this amount, and understands what's the probability of him making money, what's the probability of him interacting with other users in the space, what's the probability of this token being super attractive that people want to trade. So it's a bit more complex, but it's very, very powerful because you can model out a whole economy. Another tool that's a little bit simpler is called machinations. So CAD is Python-based. Machinations is a little bit more of drag and drop. What you see is what you get. You build relationships between like this kind of boxes, and then you put 10% probability here, 20% probability here, and it runs through the entire system 1,000 times to give you what this model could look like on an agent-based, in a modeling perspective. Yes?
Okay, there is no standard, maybe are things doing the autoregressive models for forecasting and maybe GARCH for volatility modeling?
Good question. So the questions that you're asking is really more of how do I build more sophisticated mathematical model to start aggregating randomness into my ecosystem and predict that out. The answer you probably want to hear is, yeah, we're going to make super sophisticated math models and we've got like PhDs writing math every single day. The reality is, as much as that's nice to have, people don't do that, right? You don't get central banks, or even in governments today or in companies today, nobody uses that kind of extreme forecasting to model things out. Those are used in quantitative finance to figure out how to trade. Why? Because those models, like your Markov chains, they're very good at predicting a bit more discrete model or continuous model in a small time frame. What we're looking at over here is like a period of 60 months or 20 years. So these are really, really big, that probabilities, randomness in probabilities, even a small fluctuation can give us very huge differences, and that model is not meaningful at all. That's why we don't use them. So typically we use a bit more, we just follow, just understanding probabilities. What's the probability of the demand growth? Supply we know, right? We have the tokens.
Just one more question. So the confidence intervals for the later periods are how big? What would you say for if you're forecasting for the so long periods of time for like 3, 4, 5 years?
So all the questions you're asking will be more related to how we do token analytics data, because everything that we've talked about here so far is still very academic based, very assumptions based. We're assuming that this is 10%, this is 20%. What reality is, I don't know, because this project is not live yet. So if you start taking a lot of statistics into your model, the output is not going to be meaningful because you're doing assumptions, you apply statistics to assumptions, the output is not very interesting. So that comes in later part. All right, and so when it comes to forecasting and models, some Excel, CAD machinations. There is something, there's a new project right now that, I can't remember what the name is, but it's a Spanish-based company. I'll figure it out later, I'll tell you guys. But what they do is they basically take Excel model, plant it into their software, and the software runs something like a CAD or machinations to get the output out. So as machine learning gets more advanced, as humans start using natural language to start updating and correcting the models, I think the forecasting and modeling part will be a lot easier moving forward. All right, any other topics on this, or any questions on this chapter before we move on to token audits? Yes?
Like what about system design when you can do like feedback loops inside, when you can find feedback loops inside your model, so how this approach is popular or not when you model it?
So your question is, when we're doing systems design, there are a lot of loops in there, and how do we validate those loops?
Is this approach popular comparing to agent-based model or modeling?
Okay, so your question is, as we have different loops in a system, like
Yes.
recurring interaction,
The system has a number of loops, and you try to understand what if you change this particular part of the system, what will happen in the system. Is this approach popular? Like, is it used also together with agent-based modeling, for example?
okay, I'm going to repeat your question so that everyone gets it. So your question is, there are a lot of loops in the design of the system because the people have to keep interacting with each other, so there are loops in there. And how does that loop show up in your modeling and forecasting?
Yes.
Good question. So this is both a good and bad side of things. And I'm saying this because I've been doing this for like 6 years now, and I've a lot of understanding a lot of pros and cons. So loops are going to be very useful, especially something that's useful is machinations, because machinations you can draw the design like this and you can see loops very clearly. So it's useful to help us to understand how users interact, because in real world we're going to interact a lot of times. So it's important to have loops in place. The downside of that is sometimes we can overestimate the amount of loops there is. And the frequency of loops can also be a big factor. And so that could impact the output. That being said, one of the ways that you could update your model is the loop is not fixed. There's a probability of this loop as well. So I'm interacting with you, and the probability of me interacting with you again will be 25%. But me interacting with another person, maybe it's 35%. And that helps with building a better model. One last thing I'll say before I complete the chapter on models and forecasting. People like to have very complex models. People love to show, look at my code and look at my design of my ecosystem, and I have this huge probability, and I run Monte Carlo analysis, and I give you this output. Big buzzwords. Investors typically like them as well. The thing is, people don't understand what's going on, and it will take sometimes projects take about 2-3 months to build this entire forecasting out, only to impress the investors for 20 seconds, and then the thing gets thrown away. And I'm not lying, I've seen a lot of that many, many, many times. So as much as if you're building a project, as much as you want to focus on the forecasting side of things, take it with a pinch of salt. You don't have to focus to the nth degree of super granular data. Just a high level macro version of supply and demand, understand how they work, will make sense. However, that's not the end. Once your project goes live, once you have actual data, then you add that into your data analytics to start understanding, given live data, how do I improve the system as I go? So we'll talk a little bit about that later, but before that, I want to go into token audits. Yes?
One more question is like on the brink between models and audits. Is there some approach, standard approach, or tools for, let's say, formal verification of such systems? So, for example, we design some kind of stablecoin, and we have invariant in mathematical language that, like, it's pegged to US dollar, like, most of the time with very, very, very high probability, and we want to verify this condition while modeling, because I think it's very important, because like Terra Luna didn't do this kind of checks before launching their protocol. As a result, we have multiple caps. Yeah.
So your question is, how do we check for certain kind of...
Yeah, is there some kind of functionality for that to check this logical invariance between the loops and the systems and so on, so that it's not attacked on the design level?
Yeah, good question. So basically, we've designed everything, and how do we check if there are any ways to attack the system? Almost like a pen test to see if there's a bad actor that can penetrate the ecosystem and destroy the ecosystem from outside then within. So yes, very good question. And that is basically something I've been trying to work on for a long time, which really brings us to token audit. And token audit comes in, I would say, three big ways. The first category of token audit is your smart contract technical audit, right? And the technical audit will be code, bugs, any like backdoor that people can have access to. I believe things that you guys know and I don't really know that much about. The second category is financial audit. And financial audit, it's probably more like when things are live, and you look at the finances to make sure that no embezzlement, no stealing of the money. The third audit that we need to start talking about is economics audit. And it's exactly what you talk about, the penetration test, but from a systems design perspective. And this is a very interesting way, or a very different way, to analyze and understand what economics risk look like. Because to do audit, we need to understand what risk is. This is very interesting because we are now designing a system from scratch. We're really designing from who gets to interact here, how they get to interact, and what are the assets that they use to interact. So anyone can come in here as a bad actor to destroy the system. Think of it as, political espionage. You have some spies coming in, kill your systems from within, destroy democracy or whatever economic systems that you have, and destroy it. Or you can have people with voters, very, very huge amount of tokens, voting to change the rules of how users can interact. Maybe stakeholders come in or shareholders come in saying that instead of vesting for 5 years, it's only going to be vested for 5 months because I own all of the tokens and I'm forcing all the other validators to vote in my favor. And tokens, it really depends on a lot of things, but typically tokens, we can't really touch them unless there's a code error. So with economics audit, we're really looking at how market and mechanism can be impacted, which is really on the systems design perspective. So on this thing, there's a good answer and there's a bad answer. The good answer is this is something I've been working on for about 4 years now, and we're starting to figure out how to design and how to quantify risk. The thing is, risk is very different from each ecosystem. The way you quantify risk for a DeFi or decentralized exchange versus lending protocol versus stablecoins versus meme tokens versus NFTs versus games, they're quite different. So understanding what the first principles is so that we can start taking this measure and at some level just comparing and benchmarking them. Almost like credit risk scores when you're investing in countries or companies, a credit risk score that makes sense across all kind of economies. The bad side of things is that I've spoken to PwC, EY, all the big fours, and just ask them, how do you guys see this topic? How do you guys understand audit? Because they're the boss of audits, right? They know audit best. Even they themselves are not very sure how this thing is going to work. And so the good news is that we get to redesign audit from bottom up. The bad news is we have no idea how to get that started because there's so many variables. And the most important thing, which at the end of the day, we're all business people, who's going to pay for audit and why would they pay for that? Right now, people pay for your PwC, EY, KPMG to come in to do annual audit because the government mandates that. If you're a public company, you need to get audited every single year. Right now, even the government doesn't know what audit looks like. So who's going to mandate that? Who's going to pay for that? Will community pay for that? Will investors pay for that? Why would they pay for that? How will that impact their decision? So there's still a lot of question mark going on. Yes, we see a lot of benefit in doing audit, just as increased security and transparency for everyone in the economy. But who's going to foot the cost? That's still a big question that I've not figured out the answer out yet, but I'm going to figure out in the next 12 months. In the meantime, I'm working on the model to figure out how to start measuring risk, at least from a first level perspective.
You said that we can think of it like 3 levels, and first one is actually security.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
We see this now as a general practice among all projects. Who does pay for that?
Good question. So right now, because security risk is very easy to measure, this is the number of bugs.
Yeah, more objective and more common, but it
Yes.
was not like this 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
Correct.
Like you said, who will be paying for that? Who will be checking for that? Users wanted that after they had incidents. Then it became a norm between the industry. And as far as we're looking at who is paying for that, the company or the team is paying for that, but paying it with funds, so everyone is paying for that actually.
Correct. So they're paying for that because it increases user acquisition and it increases the attractiveness for VCs to come in. Because we can objectively say that having a lower risk in terms of security audit means my project is safer, everyone gets to come in. Right now, with security audit, it's easy to measure, right? How many lines of code, and it's easier to say, okay, this error happened because of a bug in the code. When it comes to economics, when it comes to political espionage, or when it comes to some DAO voter tipping the scale, it's still much harder to prove that. Because you can argue, oh, this is someone's liberty. This is like their own tokens, and they can decide to vote anytime they want. And if they bribe people off-chain to vote in their favor, this is the free world, this is the free market. So that is a bit of a challenge. But I agree, I think it can be solved. And I think once we start taking economics audit more seriously, or just understanding what economics risk is, we'll have a better sense of respecting what economics audit look like.
And people will start demanding it, maybe.
I'm hoping so, because I think it's going to be very important. We figured the finance side of things, we figured the security side of things. I think the economic side of things will be next.
And people, investors or holders right now, they are interested in more of the legal side of the business, more of the economic side, but what's on the paper, what's on the blockchain. Okay, all the data is here, but no one is auditing that.
Yes. So the legal side of things is a whole different category, and that is really multi-jurisdictional. Every country has their own jurisdiction, and the jurisdictions change quite a lot. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know, and I work with a lot of lawyers. They're really a pain in the ass. I love them, but they're just a pain, because every time we suggest something, we suggest, okay, this incentive will work because it should incentivize a certain user, and this is how we design the token. They tell us, no, there's going to be a security risk, and there's a lot of uncertainty there. So as the space matures, I think this is going to change. People are going to take it more seriously, and we've got to start somewhere. Whether it's correct or wrong, at least we start somewhere, we get feedback, and then we improve as we go. Okay, so anything else before I want to move to the next topic on token analytics? Yes?
For smart contracts, usually we have like typical vulnerabilities, reference and so on. We also have like a set of good patterns that how we should write smart contracts, like open separate libraries or do we have something like that for tokens or like typical token contracts?
Good question. So your question is, there's some form of benchmark and guideline best practices for security audit. So, or for the technical side of things. So people can use that as a reference when designing your smart contract. Do we have that from economics perspective? So let me ask you, how many successful token projects have you seen? Many or not so many? There's 7,000 tokens being created every single day. And this has been ongoing for like last 10 years. Of all these gazillion number of tokens, how many are successful? It's really, really a small handful. It's a very small amount. And this is really evolving as the market evolves. As we have better projects, because as much as I want to say we can theory our way through all the way down, life is not about theory. There's a lot of reality, there's a lot of unexpected consequences that we can't figure out until we go and try and then we let people interact with the system. So until we have a little bit more good projects out there and we can start looking at patterns and understanding how they work, how people react, what market structures look like, what incentives look like, we're still a little bit away from creating those kind of benchmarks. That being said, a lot of people are working on it, a lot of companies are working on it, and people have been working on it for years now. So it will keep evolving as we go. Are we there yet? I don't think so. I think we need maybe another 3 more years as better projects come up, but we're definitely getting there. Okay. Anything else before I move on to analytics? Nope. Okay, perfect. So everything we've talked about so far is 0 to 1. Tokens are not even live yet. Tokens have not launched, and we already have so much planning in place. The next thing we need to talk about is what happens once tokens are launched. Tokens are going to be a very meaningful tool because, again, everything we have over tokens is really a way to understand how users are behaving and why are they behaving. So, how they behave and the incentives of how they, why they behave in this certain way. And so we want to analyze tokens because it gives us more insights to how this company, protocol, project operates. So this was a big question that I was trying to figure out for a very long time. And in fact, this started because we're working on this portfolio management company called Vesper Finance like many years ago. And they wanted to understand, okay, I've got tokens to incentivize people to stake more, to add their liquidity into this pot so I can invest. And I want to understand how people are moving in this ecosystem, where people are going, how do I update my tokenomics to incentivize more or less use case, more or less activities in the ecosystem. And with that, I need to go to data. And I tell you, I'm not a SQL person at all, like not even close, not even 1%. But we had like 2 months to finish this project, and my team really not SQL based at all. We need to go through the data, comb through the data, understand, okay, yes, everything is on blockchain, but blockchain really is just a change log of the changes that happen. I need to aggregate these things, understand what's going on, figure out how users are behaving, what user retention is looking like, what user acquisition is looking like, average revenue per user, do they go to substitutes, do they go to CeFi and they leave the ecosystem, why do they come in, is there interaction with macro markets? There's so many questions and not so many time. So what I needed was a simple tool that instead of writing 17 lines of code, I just need 1 line of code, and my focus is how do I start exploring data. A very important thing to understand, as much as we're talking a lot of like business-related stuff, Web3 still explores a lot of brand new business models. We talked about market just now, right? New stakeholders. Now stakeholders is a lot more inclusive. There's a lot of other people. They have users, investors, DAO voting, treasury. Everything is transparent. And we need to analyze that from a bigger perspective to understand how is the project running and how is the project operating. Why? Because then we can make better decisions to look at the longevity of a business. So I'll give you something real quick and real simple. I want to show you 2 things. The first one is how easy it is to drag and drop to show you to query and analyze. The second thing is how easy it is to query. So the first thing I want to do is show you this way. What we have over here is really looking at Uniswap. And the bottom one, we have ARPU, average revenue per user, ARPU. And you can see that ARPU is going down. The top one over here is transactions per user. I hope you can see that, but transactions per user is going up. That's a bit weird, right? How can people be trading a lot more and I'm not earning enough money? I'm earning even less money every single day. So that's a bit weird. So let's validate that. Maybe one reason is because it's correlated with ETH prices. So let me just add charts. Okay, so the first chart I want to see is maybe this is related to ETH prices. That's why the charts look like that. So I look at ETH asset, price, graph, 90 days. And very quickly, you can see that it's completely not related at all. This is going up, this is going down. So probably not related to ETH prices. So let's go back to this main guy over here. Transactions are increasing per user. Now, there are 2 reasons transactions could increase. The first one is because people are swapping more. The second is because people are creating new liquidity pools. People are adding, depositing or withdrawing. So there's a lot more interactions regarding liquidity pools. And so maybe there are more new liquidity pools being created. So let's validate that real quick. So we look at ETH chain, because we're only looking at ETH chain right now. We look at Uniswap v2 application, new pool count, graph 90 days. So you get a chart immediately, and you can see that they're quite correlated, and there's an increase in new pool counts being created. If you think about it, as I mentioned, there's 700 tokens being created every single day. And this really started in February in the Bitcoin ETF boom. And so a lot of tokens are being created. With that, of course, there are a lot more new pools being created. With new pools being created, people are depositing, people are withdrawing. And so that explains a lot of increase in interaction per user. At the same time, these new tokens are meme tokens, are a bit more like games that will last for 3 months and then they die off. They're not contributing that much to average revenue being earned. So this helps us to understand a little bit better of a very quick example of analytics. One last thing I want to show you, I hope this thing works. So what we want to look at is rep.eth as an asset, rep.eth as an asset, liquidity. So this will take a bit of time to analyze, but what I want to see over here is rep.eth as an asset. What is the native liquidity? Graph 90 days. So based on all the liquidity pools that we have, all the tokens and all the chains that we have, what is the distribution of the native liquidity in the network?
Without G, it would just output the table. Yeah.
Sorry?
Without G, it would be just numbers. Without the graph.
So without G, then you can change to T for table. You can change to like pi for pie chart, and we're updating that as we go. Okay, it's just taking, because there's a lot of liquidity pools, it's taking some time. But the whole point is, I needed a tool to make it easy to analyze. And what are we analyzing over here? As much as a lot of people are looking at analyzing liquidity market, analyzing trading market, open interest rates, buy-sell depth, what we're analyzing over here is really focusing on operations. So you can see here, there's like a lot of different chains with how the distribution of rep.eth. So an example of the chart that might make sense, this is graph, right? What you could do is change it to stack chart, so you could see the market share of where rep.eth is in all the system. But nobody's going to look at this. This is way too messy, too much. So what I can do is, I'm just going to put the word AGG over here. That's loading. And AGG is just aggregating all of these things into one line, because I want to see trends. I want to see how things are working out. It's taking some time. But I'm just combining all of them together to look at trend. We'll dive deeper into that later. Yes?
Can I ask what other tools you considered and why you chose to go with this one? Because I'm not familiar with the analytics tools out there.
Yes, good question. So I would say there are 3 kind of tools out there. One is SQL-based. So you have your Nansen, you have your Dune, you have like Flipside. So they're all SQL-based. These tools are great for data scientists. People who want to create their own charts, people want to create their own indexes, and they want to analyze. On the other end, I'm going to explain that first before we go back to this. All the way on the other end, you've got the defined charts for you. So this could be your DeFi Llama, your DEX scanner. So you just click and then you just get the output. The good thing about the SQL part is that you can customize to the nth degree of whatever stuff you want. The problem is, not many people use SQL. And to learn SQL, I've met a lot of people, because they want to use Dune, they went to learn SQL, they lost a lot of hair because it was just too stressful. On the other side, you have the drag and drop functions. But they're not powerful enough to query the specific stuff you're looking for. So that's a little bit more like, I just want to do high-level due diligence on what is this project about, what's the total circulating supply, and what is the liquidity looking like. That's it. And so I need something in between that allows the best of both worlds, where I have things that I don't need to customize all the way into SQL. At the same time, I want it to be flexible enough for me to start exploring data. So like this, we just aggregate all the liquidity, the native liquidity, into one line to look at trend. And you can see that, it's falling down. Now, let's aggregate it specifically by application. So I can see where specifically Is it falling down? And you can see that the biggest here, most of the rep ETH is in Uniswap v2. And there has been a big drop about a month ago. And then the rest have not been dropping that much. This is Sushi, Balancer, and Balancer. So as much as we look, I need something like this, right? I need something that's just one line. And my job as an analyst or my job as a business executive is not to query data. It's not to clean data. It's not to spend 60% of my time running through the code and saying, oh, damn, I forgot to put a semicolon at like line 21. I need something that gives me an output very quickly and very easily so I can look at trends and I can start making business decisions very quickly. Because I'm paid to make decisions. I'm paid to interpret data. And that is why I needed a tool that's somewhere in the middle. The good thing is, so if you want to go more in details, because you mentioned also where on-chain data came from, right? That's one of your questions. So it comes directly from the node itself, and it organizes all the information on the back end. So there is messy data, there is structured time series data with contextualized information. So I don't need to be querying I don't need to be calculating all the different kind of transactions in the space. So for example, if we go back to this chart over here, transaction per user, if you have to write this line, if you have to write this code out in SQL, it's about 120 lines. Because when I look at transaction count divided by daily active users. When I look at transaction count, I need to look at the swaps, the withdrawals, the deposit, and the new pool being created. I need to add all of these things together. But I don't want to do that. I just want something that's transaction count, and it does all of that for me. That just divided by daily active users. Yes?
How old is the data that's being pulled here? And is it real-time data also?
It is real-time data.
Is it possible to do some analytics for specific wallets, for example, for staking, for example, like how much the wallets earn on staking and so on?
Yes. So the structure of this, I'll change this to a bit easier. I'll explain a little bit more about this.
Also, this is like a general on-chain data, but if, for example, we want to examine one wallet or a group of wallets.
Good question. So I'm going to begin with, so the short answer is yes. The long answer is how, right? So this is divided into 4 key components. The first component is, what are we talking about? So if you want to look at staking of, maybe look at EigenLayer and you want to look at staking of rep ETH, for example, then you can define rep ETH as the asset. If you're looking at very specific protocols that is like compound that is on Uniswap, compound that's on Polygon, you can also define that. Or you can look at compound anywhere, it doesn't matter, I just look at compound, you can define that. So firstly is what are we defining? The second thing here is the function. So it could be price, it could be staking, it could be stake or unstake ratio, doesn't matter. We have like a list, 100 over different functions available. Then what does the visualization look like, and what's the time period we're looking for? Makes it easy to analyze, and we don't have to waste time, digging through data. Any other questions so far?
How do you look for specific wallets?
To look at specific wallets. So that comes in the later half of this year. To analyze specific wallets. And I think that's going to be very powerful in 2 ways. The first one is, we talk a lot about 0 to 1 just now, right? New projects coming in. I'm a brand new DEX coming in, and where do I find my first liquidity providers? There's so many other DEXs out there. All these people have the money. What do I need to do? Can I use tokens as an incentive to vampire attack them over to my new protocol? So I already have a group of people there waiting and willing and having the assets available. All I need to is just to nudge them a little bit for them to come over. So I can start going to look at data and wallet analysis to see, okay, this 20% of people are justifying 80% of the trade in this like PancakeSwap, and I'm building on BNB. So how can I incentivize them, and I can start identifying them and bring them over. The second thing that's interesting for wallet analysis is understanding a little bit more about how users behave, like graph-related analysis, like density, and just interactions between users. So maybe I cannot define KOL based on tweets, but maybe I can look at KOL based on how many users interact with this specific guy. And when this specific guy moves, somehow all these other people just seem to follow as well. So maybe that's a reason that we could start analyzing wallets. And from there, we can start identifying new markets. It could be marketing or BD related. That's why I think data, everything that we talk about data so far, like traditionally, it's all trading related. But what we really need to do is shift the conversations to operations related. How do we make good business decisions to grow the project in the long run? Which goes back to your question, the core founders have left. What are we going to do now? Doesn't matter, because the project should not be dependent on the existence of the core founder. What if the founders hit by a bus and they die somehow? Hopefully not. The project can't die, right? The project, because it's decentralized, it needs to be self-sustainable. How do we use data to make better decisions? The decisions are not based on the founders, but how can we make better decisions with data? Sorry, you had a question.
No, just an addition. Some companies, some projects are already doing that. It is very new since it is less much communication between blockchain accounts, wallets, since it is anonymized, but they are using tools, like you said, and they are using the D-Bank and D-Mail to communicate with wallet owners. They are saying
Yes.
that you are using this protocol, you are using this, and we are making this. You have to go check it out. Since there will be more social fi or ways to communicate between these wallets and projects, there will be more users.
Yes, very good suggestion. And one of the ideas of this as well is, anyone use Bloomberg Terminal before? So Bloomberg Terminal, one of the functions over there is that you can text people. And like literally there's this guy called Prince, he's like one of the Saudi prince that has a Bloomberg account, and you can text him directly, his direct line. So imagine we can start integrating this into wallets. And me as a Lisa, you guys are all in the Lisa token ecosystem. And for example, I've got a brand new update and new news information. I can just send it, and it gets sent to all the Lisa token holders, or wallet holders, or wallets holding Lisa tokens, and they get that message. Wouldn't that be powerful? And then people won't miss out on information just because they don't have Discord, or Discord is just way too messy, or they're not following the Twitter updates. Of course they get the right kind of information, not spammy information, so that they can make whatever kind of decisions. This is where it becomes a lot more conducive, because I've done a big research about 3-4 years ago during COVID time. I don't remember any time after COVID, but during COVID time, I did a big research on governance voting. And someone said one of the users of tokens is to vote. That's a very noble thing, because from what I understand, or from my research data, voters' apathy is very, very high. There's about 3% of people, or 3% of the tokens being voted every time. Unless there's a quorum set, nobody votes. And because people maybe are too lazy, they don't care, or they're just too busy. And so how do we encourage voters to make decisions so that we can start having decisions from a decentralized perspective? Here it's about really going back to the philosophy of DeFi, or blockchain.
About voting, I can add from my own experience. So there were like huge guys like Binance and Kraken, they can own like huge stake of some network, and they do not actually vote. But like smaller validators, like Orus one, Stakefish, Oracle, we care a little bit more about that. Our governance participation is higher. So
Yes. So this is not a problem just to blockchain. This is a problem in the traditional world as well. About 80% of all the equities in the big markets, in the S&P market, they are all owned by your BlackRock, your Blackstone, all these investment banks. And they're not voting. In fact, they're just following the vote of the biggest guy who says something. So that is a bit dangerous. And I see that in crypto. Just because, I won't say a name, but there is this specific layer 1 protocol, and one of the founders owns a lot of tokens. And he basically delegate a lot of this to the various kind of validator nodes, and they say, if you don't vote to my proposal and say yes to my proposal, I'm going to withdraw all my tokens from your validator node, and I'm going to put it somewhere else. So this is like off-chain bribery, and yeah, he always gets his way. And that's dangerous. I think that's dangerous to, as you mentioned, right, we can't take the centralized world or physical world that we live in, bring the same problems into the decentralized world, because that's not what we're doing. We're building a better system. Building a better system means better tools, better infrastructure, and getting people actively involved, because this is the future that they are part of. And how do we do that actively, and not just waiting for this guy who bribes everyone else to vote on his proposal. Yes?
One more question so to understand your product better. So what's the target audience? For example, I know there are some data projects that provide staking data, for example, for retail users. There are projects that collect, for example, staking on-chain data for big corpus, for accounting purposes, and so on. There are some other projects. So what are targeted at? Like ordinary people, companies, or teams, developer teams?
I'll give a short answer and a long answer. The short answer is decision makers. How do I make decisions? How do I use data to make decisions? The long answer will be researchers, could be investment analysts, you know, how you're doing benchmarking. Just now we talk about modeling, right? And modeling, you need a lot of data input. And instead of using assumptions there, how can I use competitors' data to model out the system to understand the riskiness of my investment? It could be business analysts, it could be data analysts, it could be blockchain analysts who are creating charts for people to understand, to analyze data better. Yes?
I have a question. You said that there are quite a few number of tokens which are really successful, right? Like out of the thousands and so on. And do you have any stats for tokens which use inflation model? Because I'm asking because as for me, inflation model is some kind of a cheating. It's like, I don't know, like Federal Reserve, which can print like different kind of amounts of dollars, and I do not believe in long term. So, do you have, I don't know, any kind of examples of blue tokens which you personally believe in, for example?
May I add to this question, like inflationary tokenomics versus deflationary tokenomics, like fundamental differences and what you believe is better?
Yes. So don't care about what I believe in because you should not care about what I believe in. I'm not like God or whatever kind of stuff. I'll give you the scientific answer of inflationary versus deflationary, and I'll come back to answer your question. So inflation and deflation exist for an actual reason. That's why it's not just a fluffy thing that we have in the dictionary. It's an actual tool in economics that we study. And inflation, the reason why we have, I'll explain the reason why we have inflationary assets in the physical world first. That's because the economy grows. So we're always targeting the economy to grow about 3% every year, GDP growth. And the currency is, if you think about it, it's kind of pegged to the GDP. So as your country gets richer, if you don't increase your tokens, if you don't increase your money, then your money gets more valuable. Correct? Simple, right? If you have one big bag and the bag keeps increasing, you only have 10. What's the analogy? So basically, as you have more assets coming in or more value increasing, if you don't increase the quantity of your tokens increase in price. Very simple. Now, this is a fixed phenomenon. From a policymaker perspective, going back to the qualitative design, with the incentive design we talked about just now, one of the reasons why we have these tokens is to allow people to trade and exchange with each other, right? So if, let's say, this pen costs $10 today, and I can pay $10 today, or tomorrow it will still be the same 10 coins that I need to pay, but tomorrow's value of the 10 coins is more expensive than today. Make sense? Because tomorrow there'll be more value added into the economy, and the value of these coins are going to be more expensive. So if the value of money is more expensive tomorrow than today, will I spend money today? No. Because with $10, I can buy one pen today, or tomorrow I can buy like 100 apples, because the value has increased. And so this is the reason why we have inflationary assets for two reasons. The first one is because the value of this economy grows, and with every economy that we have, we want it to grow, especially when the token is used as a means of trade and transfer. The second thing is we want people to spend, we want people to interact, because when it comes to a currency, the KPI we're looking for is transacting hands, velocity. And so if everyone says that tomorrow my money is going to be more expensive, I'm going to spend it tomorrow, I'm not going to spend it today, then nobody spends money. How are you going to make money? How are you going to make tax revenue? How are you going to create a healthy economy if nobody wants to spend? So that's the reason why we have inflationary tokens. Deflate, yes?
No, I just wanted to say, from the perspective of the token design, I think when we're creating a token with a high utility, we wanted to have the higher inflation because we want people to move the token.
Okay, so that's a big problem. That is the main reason why I came into the system, because that does not work like this. There is input and output, right? I know we have relationship between high utility and high velocity. Just because you have high velocity doesn't equal high utility. High utility first, then high velocity. So you cannot design and plan velocity into your system because you have no idea what the demand function is going to be. Does that make sense? So yes, I get the concept where people want high inflation because people want the tokens to keep changing hands, but that is a planned output, not real output. So going back, it's theoretical, yes. Oh, when you make that assumption. But when you use actual data to analyze, then that's real empirical analysis.
Okay, so the demand is excluded, so that's why we don't get the same thing from the theoretical model and from the real perspective, right?
Correct, because there's a lot of other nuances that's happening in the real world. So deflationary tokens come in a lot of other different ways, different reasons. There can be a bunch of other reasons. It could be there's a lot of value being accrued, and you either want to burn the tokens to increase the value. It's almost like a token buyback system, or whatever ways to increase the value of the token, whether for security reasons like to increase the value, or other kind of security reasons like economic security, because you punish bad behaviors. So that's a whole different set of principles of why we design deflationary tokens. So they're not, I know the words, they sound like they're cousins and they're best friends, but they come from very different school of thoughts, very different principles before designing these mechanisms. So when it comes to, have I analyzed good tokens or good projects that's inflationary, good projects that's deflationary, I don't compare them like this, because the first principles are completely different in the first case. Deflationary, like it is right now, is quite deflationary because everyone is staking the tokens, and then the transaction fees are being burnt, only the bright fee is being earned, and that is the kind of model that they're creating to increase economic security of that layer one. And that is just the design principle, the mechanism design, the middle layer of how this protocol is being designed. Does it mean that we can take this and replicate everywhere? Not really, because if your design principle is different, then you just can't take it. It's almost like a girl that has like, in the world today, the gender thing is very difficult to make analogy, but imagine that we live in the old world where, there's like the whole gender, whatever kind of stuff. Oh, okay, that's good. So a girl wears a dress and she looks pretty. A guy says, oh, that looks pretty. I'll wear the dress and I'll look pretty as well. It doesn't work like this because it needs to fit right. So going back to first principles, what is the first principles of why this incentive is designed in the first place, and you just can't copy paste it everywhere. Yes?
So then how do we properly define a fair inflation rate? So I know only one project, and it's not live yet, where a chain, and they have like inflation naturally defined by the group.
Yes, so good question. The short answer, I give short answer and long answer again. Short answer, cannot. There's no such thing as fair in the world. There's absolutely no such thing. Everyone that says this is a fair system is lying to you, because there's no such thing as fair. However, we can try to make things a little bit more equitable. So there are two ways you do that. The first one is you do a lot of beta tests, you get a lot of data, and just understand how the market has changed, what user behaviors are, and you keep updating the model as you go. So, that's where your dev environment is, your test net is, you get feedback, and understand, okay, given this set of environment, this is how people typically behave. And then you can design the right kind of inflation with other parameters in place. The second one is where bonding curves come in. And bonding curve basically means complex math that defines relationship between participants. And I have a couple of chapters on bonding curve in the book that I've written. And it really depends on what kind of relationships you're talking about, who you're talking about, what kind of, maybe the relationship is not between people and people interacting, like P2P interaction, but that could be supply and demand of tokens. Whatever it is, bonding curve is the math formula that defines the interaction between projects. A very good example, which I liked a lot until they blew up, is Bancor. I think they now rename it to Carbon, and they basically create a bonding curve that explains the relationship between the token liquidity depth and also token you're adding in to swap token A for token B. So it's a very simple, elegant model that has a lot of parameters that allows the math to change and update as new numbers come into the system. Another one that I think they're still live is called Nexus Mutual. It's an insurance protocol, and they also have a very interesting, well-designed, well-thought-out math. These are both bonding curves, by the way. So bonding curves can be a very powerful tool, and there are a few other bonding curve examples out there, used in a lot of different ways, but really defining the relationship between two independent variables. No, so that was something before, and they've updated a few. They were the first pioneers of bonding curves, and bonding curve is one of this brand new, beautiful math that created because of Web3. So Uniswap uses bonding curve, like all the DEXs uses bonding curve, and a few other projects use bonding curves. They got messed up. Well, I believe it's not. I don't have stake in them, but I believe it's not their fault. It's Celsius exploiting the system. So this is one of the big downsides in everything that we've talked about today. Everything is truly transparent. And like it or not, people just want to game the system. And whatever system you build, no matter how robust, people will try to crack it. It's like penetration tests, like full force, and just trying to break your system and destroy it from within. And this is just life. So I believe that was one of the biggest tests. That they didn't imagine Celsius will just dump the tokens and then everything gets liquidated and the whole system falls. There is a risk parameter in place and this thing works to a degree in which tokens are being dumped, but when it's above that, the whole system doesn't work. So another interesting project is a Gauntlet. They don't build anything, but they're a consultancy firm. They help projects to measure engineering and financial risk. So we talk about the three kind of risks: the economic risk, security risk, and financial risk. They help them to do a little bit of the engineering and financial risk. That is really just heavy math. Super. Any other questions? Yes?
I probably have an addition. Do you know about logistic map function?
Logistic map functioning.
Yes. Function. It's like there is a very interesting correlation with chaos, but it's different. So the idea is like small change in the parameter can change the system completely. You can have multi-model function. You can have like function which behaves almost like random, and you just change one parameter in the system, and probably I have like some beliefs that you can't really model the system because it has chaotic parameters unless you have some demand on locality of the function. So for example, if you can move funds like $1 per 1 meter per 1 second, somehow you basically have like physical currency, even if it's digital. So you have property of locality, and you kind of start to relate to physics.
Yes.
Which enforced.
So your question is basically, as we're modeling systems out, a small difference in parameters can create a very chaotic function, and the output can be drastically different from what reality is.
Yeah.
Very good question, and that basically answers your question just now on modeling, and can we model based on all these Markov chain or randomness functions added in there? Ideally, yes, we can, but also reality is that one small difference in parameter change can lead to drastic output changes that is completely far from what the actual item is. So I like your point where it goes back to physics. Everything we've talked about today is really just economics, the first part. The second part, we added some data into economics, and we can expand that to figuring out empirically proving all these incentives that we have designed, right? So we designed the incentive as the middle mechanism layer, and we can start measuring how people behave. And this can be a set of inputs and probabilities to define the chaotic function or the chaotic environment, the chaotic system, just on a little baby level. So given market structure and incentives, given market structure, what is the behavior of people? And once we have live data, we can analyze that, and we can start building the model ground up, almost replicating physics, but using data and using natural experiments, which are ecosystems that we've built. That's something I'm super excited about, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. Sorry, this guy first.
I'm also just a basic level, but maybe is there any possibility to, because of the chaotic things that are going around, to include stochastic math and like Brownian motions and stuff like that into the equation to give us like a bit more precise?
Good question. The answer is no. No, because it's just too random. And when randomness is just too much, it can create a very drastic outcome. And yes, you can add more math to help you make better decisions, but the input effort versus the output data or decision you have to make, the ROI is just not worth it.
So every now and then we hear of a new idea in this space like 3-3 bonding or
Yes.
vote escrow tokens. Should we always be skeptical of these? Are there any that you think there's some novel kernel somewhere there?
Yeah, I think there are two traits that everyone should have: critical thinking and healthy skepticism. Always have that, no matter how true or how fake things are, always have that. I think 3-3 is a very interesting model. So anyone here have not heard of 3-3? Okay, so 3-3 is designed by, what's the project called?
Who was the first one?
Olympus now, yes.
Or Olympus,
Yes, a long time ago, right? So they basically, they pioneered this new thing called protocol-owned liquidity. So they will issue, you need to stake your tokens with them, and every time you stake with them, you get bonds, but basically you get more tokens. And every time you get more tokens, you just keep staking with them, and it's like a little game. You keep staking with them, you get more tokens. You keep staking with them, more tokens. So 3-3 is their way of saying everyone stakes with them, everyone gets more tokens. So that's the general gist. And so the protocol owns the liquidity, can move them around, and they keep rewarding people for that liquidity. So the short answer is, I think it's a fantastic experiment because we don't have this kind of monetary experiment in the world ever before. The closest we have done in terms of experiment from a monetary perspective was the zero and lower effective interest rates, early COVID times, and we will never ever see that ever again. Ever. We will never ever see zero interest rates ever again. You want to buy a house with zero interest rates? Yeah, never ever think about that. It will not come back. But that's a very interesting experiment. We have never done that before. So in that way, we are experimenting with new things beyond the limits of how literature has given. And it's very interesting. Whether it works out or not, I don't really believe in that. But also, I also don't know a lot of different things. So maybe it will work somehow when people find the parameters correctly. Yes?
Maybe I'm a little bit off topic. So, well, we have designed Tokenomics, then we put our coin on the market, and then the price discovery happens. And that's another mechanism and so on. So, did you have any experience with all this price discovery and so on? For example, I know people from Godbit, and from what I know from their internals, that's very shady.
Yes, very good question. And I think I've learned this the hard way because I was very naive before. If we have good, robust economics and good incentive, we attract the right kind of people, and then we have happy days. But reality is in two folds. You need economics, which is incentives, and you need politics, which is people and relationships. You can model economics, you can model incentives to the T with all these complex quantitative finance models. But when it comes to human and politics, that's just humans.
Yes,
And
just for example, when they put token onto the market, they care not about only economics, but also how the curve looks on the screen.
Yep.
And I mean, that's also some kind of psychological incentive. And
correct.
You have to,
Yep. So
to correctly market make the curve so that people come in and to buy another new coin. So
yes. So in crypto Twitter, they call it psych ops, right? And it's really getting, market makers coming in to really drive a specific narrative. And at the end of the day, as much as we talk about, as much as I want to tell you, but I will not tell you this, I want to tell you that all you need is strong economics. The reality is that you still need to build a narrative around it. Economics helps us to do the incentive part of things, right? The rewards you give to people for behaving, or the disincentive if they misbehave. But you still need to focus on narrative because we're humans and we love stories. We need to build the right narrative. We can use data to create narrative instead of using KOLs and influencers to build narrative. And I think that can help us to drive a better way to start promoting and building more solid, robust models. Okay, with that, I think we've asked a lot and talked a lot already. I'm just going to pause I'm just going to stop so that you guys can mingle around and ask more questions. So I said that I'll give one book to the person who asked the best question. In fact, I'll give two because you guys are fantastic and ask a lot of questions. But because we are decentralized and we all vote together, you guys get to decide who gets to win the books. So, I wish I thought about that. Anyone can just create a token real quick right now, and then we can just allocate to wallets. That'd be fun. So, Those who ask questions, maybe you can stand up and then you can come here and then people vote. Although you either do that or I come to you and like drag you out of your chair. Thank you. Come on, come on, come on. I'm not going to bite you. Like you all know each other, so come on. Come on.
By default.
Come on, come up, come up.
Don't be shy, yeah.
You want me to drag you out of your chair? I mean, I've been lifting so I can start carrying people now, but come up. Okay. Fantastic. So you guys get to vote. Yeah, you guys get to vote as many times as you want. Just don't vote for everyone because I don't have that many books. So.
Do we vote actually for each other here?
No. All right. What's your name?
Christos.
Sorry?
Christos.
Haristos. Raise of hands if you think Haristos should win the book.
What's his question?
Oh, I think that's going to be this will take us until 10 o'clock.
Okay.
Okay, one vote. All right. Your name, please?
Sergey.
Sergey. 3. Okay. 4. All right. Sorry, your name?
Pavel.
Pavel.
Can we vote multiple times or just one?
Multiple times. Okay, I think seems like to be the most so far. Your name?
Engineer, pseudo-anon.
Engineer. Oh no. We'll figure out later. Okay, your name?
Ibrahim.
Ibrahim. Okay. Your name?
Gregory.
Gregory. Okay.
Kirill.
Kirill. Okay.
Ognen.
Ognen. All right. Okay, this is really hard.
Now second.
Okay, so who were the top 3?
Now we need to count.
Debates, you know?
Debates. We're going home at midnight tonight. You guys figure it out. I'm just going to get the books, okay? This is delegation. This is decentralized voting. You guys decide who the other 2 people who win. I'll be back in a bit. Yeah, we're not going to do that. Can I have the key?
We should put chairs and then
Thank you so much. Thank you. There's no one left! What is this?
the founder was gone.
Okay, so this is the book. It's the Economics and Math of Token Engineering and DeFi. Okay, so like...
Maybe you can keep it here. People will check them.
Let them fight.
Sure, like, you guys can decide. You guys can decide.
Auction.
Oh.
Should we have everyone stand up again? Get them back up there. I think I caused a problem. I should create the
Look,
solution.
actually, this place is kind of open for these people, so
Yeah.
you can leave it here, and anyone who needs it can just.
Yeah, sure. What do you guys think?
Library.
As a library, yeah.
Okay, then I'll just leave this here. And, okay, you guys can read it and browse it. There are 26 chapters. The first 13 chapters talks about economics, and the last 13 chapters talks a little bit more about the economics application to DeFi.
There's no something about agent-based model.
Not inside, no, unfortunately. Yeah. All right, thank you guys. Thank you so much for this.